possums are just amazing animals. Stuart came to me about 15 months ago when he was 1 month old, and I'm not about to flash you, nobody panic. This was baby Stuart, and he was actually younger than that. He was eyes closed, 27 grams, and he was found by the public. It was actually he and his brother. I will fast forward because I know everybody's waiting to meet him. So both of them had health problems. They had metabolic bone disease. They had some other things going on. Worked with both of them, gave them a very, very high calcium diet, took them out in the sun, gave them some good UVB. And at 7 months old, both of them went out to the Wildlife Center to have their bone density x-rays done to see if they were okay at that point. So went out to the Wildlife Center in Waynesboro, great group of folks, and the vet did the x-rays and came back and said, we have good news and we have bad news. The good news is their bones, excellent, completely reversed to MBD, which for those of you who rehab know that that can be tricky and it's not always completely reversible. The bad news. Stuart has no hip sockets, which is why he's non-releasable. I don't feel sorry for him because nobody carts me around in a baby carriage. He's fine. He can run, he can walk, he can climb. He doesn't usually because he's lazy, because again, baby carriage. But he can do everything that a fully functional possum can do. He just can't go back into the wild because we don't want his little wonky genes mixing with the gene pool out there in the wild and creating other hip socketless possums. His brother's fate was not quite as good. His brother Mickey, at 7 months old, had extremely deformed elbows, and at 7 months old they were full of arthritis. So Mickey's journey ended there. We don't tell Stuart why his brother doesn't come to visit, so just don't talk to him, don't tell him. But Stuart has gone on to be a legal education animal as of this past April, and since then we have done, by the end of this year, we will have done about 35 programs and educated probably, at this point, probably close to 1,900 people just since April. So without further ado, I gotta get a sharp pause, so I got my little battle jacket on here. So again, he is about 16 months old. He is full grown and then some. See, I told you he's not even out yet. Nobody, and it's really funny, there will be a quiz at the end because everybody remembers his name. Nobody remembers my name, and I took my name tag off too. It's harder for you guys. All right, so here's the big man. And I have my notes here. So for those of you who don't know me and think this means that I only have a few things to say about possums, because those of you who do know me know that I can talk about possums for a good solid 8 hours. People just get up and walk away, I would be offended. But anyway, so the first thing that I want to let you guys know, which I always forget to say, is the name of my company is Awesome Possums. I refer to these guys as possums, but technically this is a Virginia opossum. When John Smith discovered the United States, in the 1600s, he came across this animal and used the Algonquin term opossum to describe this, what he thought was white animal. Maybe he had problems with his vision, but some of them are more white than others. That's where the term opossum came from, Algonquin opossum. I think the word opossum sounds silly, and I refuse to say it. So I call them possums. But just so you know, because we are actually getting education for this, should be something educational here. It is Virginia opossum. Now there are actually possums, but they are in Australia and New Zealand. Not their scientific, but their technical name is possum versus opossum. Opossums, have been around for about 70 million years. They were around at the time of the dinosaurs. They're prehistoric. Now the question for me is, how did they outlive the dinosaurs? Obviously dinosaurs aren't around anymore, right? Possums are. So how did they do it? I think there's a few reasons. first one is that possums are not fussy. For those of you who've seen them in the wild or rehab them, you know that they eat just about anything. The problem with a lot of the dinosaurs was they had a very specific territory, a very specific region where they lived, and a very specific diet. And when the diet and the region changed, it contributed to the extinction of those dinosaurs. Possums adapt. They will eat just about anything. And yes, no, you're a piggy. In the wild, they will eat mice, cockroaches, rotten fruit, rotten vegetables, non-rotten fruit, non-rotten vegetables. They also eat carrion, dead things. So we call them nature's little sanitation engineers because they really do help clean up the environment. But for people who don't like possums, I usually lead with this. They eat ticks. Lots and lots and lots of ticks. I don't know who counted, but I've heard that they will eat 4 to 5, not 45, 4 to 5,000 ticks in a season. Now, how do they do this? Ticks are small. How do you find them? Well, the possums in Virginia wander around at night because they're nocturnal, and like anything that lives in Virginia, it's going to get covered in ticks if you're outside, right? So they wander around at night doing their little possum thing, and they get covered in ticks because they're on the ground, they're in the leaves, they're in the trees where all the ticks are, in the grass. And then when they go back to, go to their little, wherever they're gonna hole up and go to sleep, they're extremely efficient at grooming. And that's how they get all the ticks, and that's how they eat the ticks, because they're about 95% efficient at grooming. But they also have a superpower. You guys know what that is? Rehabbers. Actually, possums have many superpowers because they're awesome. But they can eat poisonous snakes. Right? Possums in the wild think baby copperheads are like spaghetti. Yummy. So tasty. You should have seen the look on her face. It was worth driving 50 miles up here just for that. They have a molecule in their blood that actually neutralizes snake venom. So they do eat poisonous snakes, and in Virginia help keep our copperhead population in check, which makes them pretty dang okay with me because they probably like snakes. Don't tell the snake rehabbers that. Yeah, you don't either? No. But anyway, to each his own, right? So yeah, that's one reason that I think they've outlived the dinosaurs is they're not fussy. Now I always get the question, what is Stuart eat? Well, Stuart has 50, that's 50, razor sharp teeth. So he pretty much eats whatever he wants to. I try to keep his diet fairly similar to what he would eat in the wild. So he gets mice. You guys like mice? Yeah. Mice. And he also gets fruits and vegetables, but because he is a spoiled opossum, he also gets yogurt, cottage cheese for the calcium. He gets supplements. I do herbalism, so he gets all different kinds of crazy things that my husband won't even eat, but Stuart doesn't know any better. I can sneak it in his food. And he gets vegetables. He gets a little high quality dog and cat food. I do kind of ease up on the protein a little with him because he's kind of a big dude. He doesn't need a ton of protein. So another reason that I think opossums have outlived the dinosaurs, I sort of alluded to, they're nomadic. They don't have a territory to defend. He's gonna start to get a little rambunctious here. Possums will walk up to, kind of roam around and roam up to 2.5 miles a night looking for food. Sorry about the tail, always goes there, don't know why. So a couple of times a year, they roam around looking for love, which is why we see a lot of them in the road. They're constantly, wandering. They have these really helpful handles too. So they're nomadic. They don't have a nest, really, like a permanent one. They don't have a burrow. Again, they don't have territory. Everybody loves these shots. I don't know butt shots. And then if I show you his face, you get my butt. And I'm not sure which view is worse, so I'm just going to be probably the other one is worse. And they have, and possum rehabbers know this, they have a ton of kids. They have a ton of babies. You know what I mean? How many? You know, mama possums can raise up to 13 babies. Can you imagine? Is that your brother? Can you imagine having, how did you do that? I almost screwed that math up. 12 brothers and sisters? Oh, I knew the look, again, the look on her face. She's great. Me either. It's a lot of sharing. So, mama possums, and here we go. Mama possums can have up to 20 babies. Now everybody's like, wait, you just said 13. Yep, I said they can raise 13. They can actually have 20 little itty bitty teeny honeybee-sized joeys. Because again, possums are marsupials. They're related to koala bears and kangaroos, wombats, Tasmanian devils, and all of their babies are called joeys. So possum babies are called joeys. So mom can have up to 20 babies. There's a catch. She only has 13 nipples. So the first 13 win. So how many moms, obviously, how many moms do we have in the group here? Ladies, you're going to appreciate this. Does anybody know the gestation of a mama possum? 13 days. That usually gets her no. And this is called possum yoga, by the way. It'll get worse. Anyway. It's dinner and a show, lunch and a show. Mildly distracting to have a 11-pound possum climbing around on you. So back to the babies. Can't believe you were ever that small, dude. Ever. Thanks for that. Right in the ear. So they can have 13 babies. So what happens is because possums raise their babies in a pouch, right? I wonder why I have back issues. Because they raise noise in my ear. Because they raise their babies in a pouch, marsupials are non-placental animals, which I just learned the ins and outs of this about 2 weeks ago, because I was doing a program at a school, and a little boy raised his hand at the end and said, "Does Stuart have a belly button?" Okay, no. He said, "Why not?" Well, I knew possums being non-placental, right? They don't have the placenta, they don't have the umbilical cord, no belly button. But it never really dawned on me, how the heck? How do they have babies? What are the babies in? So the wonderful vets at the Wildlife Center got a call, because they get a lot of calls from me every time something pops into my brain. I call them. And I said, let's talk non-placental animals. How does this work exactly? So when the 20 baby possums are in the uteruses, plural, we'll talk about that in a minute. That's a conversation. The look on her face was really good. They are basically, there's 20. There's 2 uteruses. I'm going to ruin that surprise right now. That's not even the weirdest part. There's 20 of them, so basically I think that's how she can have so many. She's got like a double oven thing rocking there. She can cook a double batch. So they're rattling around in the uterus like dice in a Yahtzee cup. They're not getting, for 13 days, they're not really getting that much nutrition. They're just kind of there. And there's a lot of really weird things to possums, but another really weird thing is because they're not really attached to her, like an infant with an umbilical cord in the placenta, mom's body thinks they're foreign objects. And about day 13 or 14, her body expels them. Oh. I know, right? Don't listen, Stu. You were expelled, buddy. That's harsh. So they have to, these little tiny unformed gummy bear looking jelly bean honeybee sized creatures have to go from mom out of mom, we'll spare the details here, and crawl across her stomach and go into the pouch. That was sort of perfect. Can you tell I used to carry them in my pockets and things in this jacket? So then they go into the pouch where they attach to her really, really long, thin nipples. And when they do that, the nipple swells. So basically they are stuck, they are physically attached to mom in the pouch for the first 2 months of their lives. And that's where they're getting the nutrition and their antibodies and everything that they need to grow up and be big, strong. Oh, look at the jiggly. Jiggle, jiggle, jiggle. Sorry, squirrel. So, why would the whole double uterus thing? Because we're adults here, right? For the most part. The males, let me just preface this by saying the reproductive system of a marsupial is really, really strange. Do we know male-female anatomy names? Okay, I don't need to dumb this down for good. All right. You guys all know? Assume, just checking. Oh, here we go. So the males, Stu, everybody wants to know if Stuart has a pouch. No, and if you look for it, he gets really crabby, FYI. The males have a forked penis. A lot of you knew that. A lot of you didn't, from the looks on your face. Some of you did. All right, so why on earth would the male of any species need a forked penis? Because the females, well, first of all, the females have a double uterus, which sort of makes sense, but the whole 2 prongs into one, yeah, that just doesn't make any sense. The females, this is my favorite part of any presentation when I get to say, female possums have 3 vaginas. No. Did you know that, Mommy?
No.
Yay! Yes! Grace? Where'd Grace go? Did you know that?
I did not.
Sweet! All right. I've officially earned my 1 hour of education credit signing ability here. Yes. So I actually need to have a diagram of this. The external ones go up, where the sperm goes up, and then the babies come out a center one. And at the top, it's called the vaginal cul-de-sac. It sounds like a neighborhood coffee shop. Pretty. Work that into conversation at every opportunity. Possums shed a lot. I'm not actually having like an epileptic fit. It's just I'm covered in possum hair up here. So, yeah. Okay. So, I did warn you that the marsupial reproductive system is really, really strange. But I think that's circling back to how they've outlived the dinosaurs. One of the reasons. They're not fussy, they don't really have any particular region or den or anything like that to defend, and they have tons and tons and tons of babies. Now, we also know that they have tons of babies because a good portion of them don't survive their first year. They're prey animals, which us possum rehabbers like to not think about. And they are, basically they're on their own. They're weaned from mom when they're only about 1 pound, which is not a very big possum. So they're preyed on by owls, obviously, because they are nocturnal. Now we're gonna try to get in my jacket. Owls, foxes, coyotes, cats, a full-grown cat could easily take down a baby possum. Dogs, people that don't understand that they're not dangerous, vicious, aggressive animals, will sometimes not allow them to live to adulthood. But they are also notoriously bad at crossing the road. We know this. Now, a lot of times they're out eating things on the side of the road. I mentioned they eat dead things, right? Carrion? Well, if you have something that's been hit by a car and it's on the side of the road, or people throw out food and it's on the side of the road, that's why a lot of possums get hit. We think they're... That's breath. He's tired. Mentioned nocturnal, right? You're a good boy. So a lot of times they're just eating things that they find on the side of the road and then they get hit. But I did one presentation and this older gentleman comes up to me afterwards and said, "Why did the chicken cross the road?" Random, okay.
To get to the other side.
I said, "I don't know, sir. Why did the chicken cross the road?" He said, "To show the possum it could be done." I was like, "Aw, touche." But yeah, okay, they're not very good at it. Oh, not very good. So that's why I think mom has to have lots and lots and lots of babies. And then their wonky reproductive system allows them to be able to do that. Did you just want to hug him? I just want to hug him.
How do they handle 20 babies?
Well, they only have 13. She only raises 13. But she has a hard time. Has anybody actually ever seen a possum either in the wild or on YouTube when they have their babies and their babies come out of the pouch and they ride around on mom? It's like the Marsupials soccer mom kind of thing. You've never seen that? I'm gonna get your mom to YouTube it for you. It's really funny. So, since we're talking possum babies, if they get separated, because sometimes when mom's out and she has a bunch of babies hanging on her, so if something startles her, she'll kind of take off really fast. And a baby, or 3 or 5, will fall off. And how does she find them? What happens? Well, sometimes if something really scares her, she just takes off and doesn't come back for them because she can have more. So her life is worth more than her babies. Not all moms think that way. Possum moms do. But if she knows, if she runs away and thinks, uh-oh, I lost little Susie or little Jenny, what she'll do is she will stop and she'll sit and she'll make a clicking noise. Right? Okay. I know the baby one. I just never really got the mom one. So she'll make that little noise, and then the babies will hear it, and they'll make a noise. And it's kind of sad whenever anybody brings me a box of possums, because they never come in 1 or 2, you always get a box of them, that the babies are making that noise. And I know it means they're looking for mom. But inevitably, whoever brings me the box says, "I think they all have colds because they're sneezing." They're looking for their mom, and it's so sad. So in the wild, the mom will click, the babies, the mom clicks, the babies, mom clicks, the babies, and eventually, in theory, they find each other, sort of like a marsupial Marco Polo. And then if they do, they climb on and everybody's good. If they don't find her, then that's when people find the babies and they bring them to rehabbers. Now, whenever we get possums in a rehab situation that should still need, their mom's milk, the formula, we always have to tube feed them, because remember I said when they're born and they go out of mom and crawl across her stomach and attach to her really, really long nipples. The nipples actually go right into her stomach. So basically for 2 solid months, she tube feeds them. It's like this constant drip, drip, drip of nutrition and antibodies and all good things for possums. So unlike squirrels and bunnies and puppies and kittens and humans, baby possums do not have a suck reflex. So they won't latch onto that little modified nipple that we use in a rehab setting and suck like a squirrel will. So we have to tube feed them. Can you tell I used to carry him around in this jacket? He thinks he still fits, but he doesn't.
He can if he goes under.
No, he still doesn't really fit. There isn't room enough for both of us in here. So, let's talk, because I think he's about to show us tails. Possums have what's called prehensile tails, like monkeys. They can use them sort of like a 5th limb. They use them to hang on and smack me in the face. But they also use them to carry things. And we're going walkabout again, because Australian cousins. So in the wild, the babies, or in a rehab setting, the babies can actually hang from their tails. that use it. I've seen one in a group of 12 rappel down into the middle of the food dish hanging on something. A lot of people think that possums sleep upside down hanging from their tails. They're not bats, people. They don't sleep upside down. In fact, fun fact, Bonnie knows this, Grace knows this, possums sleep flat on their back with their feet up in the air. And after having had Stuart, I can attest that the males do the adults do the exact same thing. If anybody's on Facebook and has gone to my Awesome Possums with a Z Facebook page, you will see many pictures of him and the other ones that I have sleeping flat on their backs, not a care in the world, with their feet right up in the air. It's the funniest thing, just completely relaxed. We were talking about tails, yes. So I actually just acquired a young female a couple of weeks ago who does not have a tail. I got her from a member of the public, Southern Virginia. I didn't ask a whole lot of questions. It was just more important at that point that I actually get her away from that situation than to get all the details of what happened to her tail. But she has about this much of a tail, which is ridiculously adorable. She looks like a little Cocker Spaniel. But the lack of her tail, in fact, if they lose any more than about the first 2 inches of their tail, it automatically makes them non-releasable. Even she is completely healthy in every other respect. But because in the wild, she wouldn't be able to gather nesting or bedding material, especially coming into winter, that would be extremely important. She can't make herself a nice warm bed in the wild. So she isn't really enthusiastic about the prospect of being an education animal, but I'm working with her, and my goal is to get her, maybe not this mellow, because Stuart's just a really, really mellow guy, but eventually to be able to use her for education programs as well. So I have a riddle for you guys. Stuart has something on his body that you have on your body, but it's in a weird place. Doug, want to take a crack at it? Bonnie, you know where I'm going with this. What's the answer? What's this? Where do they have thumbs? Exactly. And he almost is going to show us. I'm going to have him circle around and we're going to try this again. Now, for some bizarre reason, Stuart hates me to show his toes. I don't know why. He hates it. He has never liked me to show his toes. If I can get him to cooperate and climb back up, I'm going to have to do this really quickly. Get up there, big guy. On their back feet. Now, why I always ask kids when I do kids presentations, why would anybody need a thumb on their back feet? Do they write with it? Do they wave with it? Well, no, the answer, most of us can probably figure out, is to do exactly what he's doing, to climb along with their front fingers, their rear opposable thumb is great for climbing. Instead of climbing like this, they can use those back feet just like monkeys, and they can grip and they can climb. And anybody that's ever seen baby possums in a cage or out in the wild, they can climb up just about anything, cage bars, nothing slows them down though. So the lifespan of, people always ask me, so possums live a really long time, right? Oh, I so wish that was the case. In the wild, a lot of them are lucky to even make their first year. Like I said, it's between the predators, the cars, and our winters here. They have the hairless tails, the hairless ears, which are prone to frostbite. And again, you know, if any part of their tail gets damaged, it really reduces their ability to survive in the wild, which is already pretty difficult for them. Finding food in the winter is pretty hard, so a lot of them don't survive their first year. But people say, oh, in captivity they must live a lot longer because they don't have to worry about finding food and all of those things. Again, I wish that were the case. In captivity, they may live 3 or 4 years. 4 is fairly common. I've heard of some who have kept them for 5 years, which is amazing. They're prone to heart issues, heart disease, cardiomyopathy, heart problems like that. But they also just age faster than a lot of animals. And there's a really fancy, pretty word for that. The process of aging. Does anybody know what it is? Starts with an S. Senescence. It's a big word, right? Makes me sound smart. Senescence. It's the process by which we age. It's the reason that big dogs don't live as long as small dogs. Their body just ages and wears out faster. Even though possums aren't that big, they just don't live as long. I had somebody meet me at the vet that I use down in Fredericksburg, and he's like, yeah, man, I got this really, really old possum, and she's not doing well, and they just wanted to have her checked out and hopefully re-released. Well, I met the vet and we did an exam, and she looked like she was like 10 years old, but probably only about 4 years old. But her teeth were all worn down. Some of the front ones were broken, but even the molars had just worn down. Because you figure they eat a lot of bones, and a lot of, in this area, the more urban areas are eating a lot of garbage and things like that, whereas in the more country areas, they're eating things that are a little bit more native to their actual diet. But I think it's just a combination of factors. I don't think it's, their metabolism is especially high. That's actually a really good question. Did you have a question?
Where does that possum live?
Where does he live? He lives with me. He has a very, very fancy outdoor enclosure, but because it's so cold now and I don't want him to, get frostbite or anything like that, he actually stays in my rehab area, which is in my basement. So he lives in my basement. And you know where he sleeps? He sleeps in a closet. Because again, they're out roaming around all night. In the morning, early morning, they have to find somewhere to sleep. And they will find a crack or a crevice in your wood pile. They're really, really good climbers, so they can climb trees, and if there's a hole in a tree, they'll curl up and go to sleep there. They'll sleep under your shed, under your house. If there's a hole that they can get up into your attic, they'll do that. So a lot of people have issues with wildlife, and some rightly so, because wildlife can be extremely destructive. I'm the first one to say squirrels are the most destructive. Love them dearly, but they will destroy a house in no time. Raccoons, destructive. Groundhogs, destructive. The good thing about possums is they're not going to tear a hole in the side of your house to try to make a nest. They're not going to undermine a sidewalk or, dig underneath a shed or a building or anything like that. Now, if they find an abandoned groundhog burrow, or they, like I said, if there's already a hole into your shed or a hole in your house, oh yeah, they're going to take advantage of it. But they're not the ones that are actually destroying things in order to make nests. They're very opportunistic. They'll go wherever they can find to hole up and sleep. They may stick around in one area for a couple of months. If the females have babies, sometimes they'll, stay in one place a little bit longer. But as I said in the beginning, they're nomadic. Now, an interesting thing about possums, and there's so many interesting things, of course, is that their brain size compared to their skull and the rest of their body, comparatively speaking, is extremely small. So when scientists were first learning about, researching, and discovering information about possums, it was assumed that the smaller your brain, the dumber you were. That has since been proven to not necessarily be the case. Even though they have extremely small brains, sorry Stu, what you do, they are, he's like, whatever man, look, you're carrying me around, who's the idiot? Yes, I know. Scientists have discovered that possums are better at remembering where food is than rats and dogs. And we all know that rats can remember mazes, and rats are extremely smart animals when it comes to remembering where food is, because that is a life skill. You know, when you're a wild animal and you have to find food, that's a pretty important skill to have. So their brains are wired to remember where food is. So people always ask me, how do I attract possums to my yard? Because the more of these presentations I do, the more people realize possums are good. They eat ticks and snakes and things that we don't want. So everybody wants possums. In fact, 4 people this year have called me wanting to buy baby possums. And my first thought was, that is a fantastic business idea. I don't think DGIF would appreciate it. So I have to explain to people, well, it doesn't really work that way. Now, if you have property that is that I deem appropriate, you know, not near a main road, you have acres, you have a water source, and everything that we hope for our wildlife, and you are in Stafford County, then I will happily release baby possums, because I have raised and released 94 possums, 43 squirrels, and 5 bunnies this year, and I was running out of places to put my possums. So I do have several release sites down in Stafford County. So I will release on people's property if, you know, the circumstances are met. But as for selling baby possums, brilliant, but not exactly legal. And even if I could release, you know, right where you want them, around your yard to eat all those ticks, they're not gonna stay there. They may come back if there's a good food source, but they're not gonna stay there. So, eyesight, people ask me, how's their eyesight? It's okay during the day. He can forage around and find food, and he can see well enough to get into things in my basement. But where they really excel is at night. Obviously, they're nocturnal, right? They have to have really good vision. What most people don't understand is their vision is about 5 times better than cats at night. Questions? Ma'am?
What is the hissing thing?
So that is a defense thing. Let's talk about possum defense mechanisms, shall we? They have a really a fun one that you guys are gonna love especially. So if a possum is in the wild, doing its possum thing, right? Just hanging out, looking for food, looking for ladies, whatever they do, and something runs up to them, whether it's a kid or a dog or a coyote or whatever, the first thing that they're gonna do is they're gonna show their very sharp teeth, and they're gonna hiss just like a cat, and they're gonna puff up, try to make themselves look bigger. And that's, do you guys see what he did? When he finally gives up, he goes, as many, I mean, I've seen it hundreds of times, and it's a riot. So over all this. So they'll puff up and they'll hiss, and if they're really scared, they make a little noise. And that's to scare off the predator. And if that doesn't work, then what they do is they'll start to drool a little bit. And they'll start to stagger. They look a little crazy, probably like I do right now. And that's to make the predator think that they're sick, because nobody wants to eat anything that's sick, right? That's yucky. And then if that doesn't work, they squirt out this green, the color of Michelle's sweatshirt actually. That's about, Bonnie, wouldn't you say that's possum button green right there? So if anybody wants to look at Michelle's sweatshirt. And they squirt it out of their butt. And why do they do that? Does anybody, Bonnie, I know. Exactly. Bonnie, I know you smelled it. Has anybody ever had a dog that needed its anal glands cleaned? All right, multiply that by about 10. That's about what you have, and it's just oily, and it's not fun. enjoy the food afterwards. It's disgusting. And they do that to make themselves smell dead. It works. So a lot of times we get older, a little older, not baby possums, and if they're scared when we take them out and try to weigh them or do whatever, well, they'll hit you with it. And then, or they poop in your hand. That's fun too. That means put me down. If you're a possum. Clarify. So, and then if that doesn't work, how many people have heard the expression play possum? Possums actually play possum. And we think they do it just because apparently it's fun. It's actually it's completely involuntary. They have no control over it whatsoever. So if they hiss and they puff and they spit and they drool and they stagger and they squirt the Michelle-colored sweatshirt butt stuff, and that doesn't work, then they will actually fall over
And play dead.
And they'll be completely unconscious. Their heart rate drops to a couple of beats per minute. So you put your hand on them, they actually get a little stiff. Their eyes stay open, their mouth stays open. They smell horrendous, as we've already discussed. And they can stay like that until the danger has passed. And the mystery is that scientists have studied this, and nobody knows how the possum knows when the danger is past. They're unconscious, right? They're completely unconscious, yet they know when that danger has passed. And they get up, shake themselves off, probably clean their butts, right? Their butts are gross. And they jump in the out with his tail. See the tail demonstration rocking here? And then they just go on their little possum merry way.
What if they play dead and it doesn't work?
Then they get eaten. But it usually works.
That doesn't work.
Well, they get eaten. She wants all the scenarios here. It's usually pretty dang effective. This is irony right here. Everybody, obviously not rehabbers, but the general public usually thinks that somehow that possums have rabies. And I don't know, I mean, I've taught wildlife classes to ACOs, and they're like, yeah, everybody that has, a possum in the yard flips out. Oh my God, there's a possum in my yard. It has rabies because it pisses, it puffs up, it drools, right? It gets startled. It acts like it has rabies. Its hair is all jacked up because it's probably been playing in the trash and digging around. It's stinky. Not all possums, this is going to come as a surprise to you guys, not all possums are as well groomed as Fat Boy here. Some of them look a little gnarly. So when people see possums in their yard, it's easy to think, oh, this thing has disease and it has rabies and it's aggressive and it pissed. It tried to kill my whole family, and the stories just are fantastic. So the irony is possums, generally, cannot even contract the rabies virus. Their body temperature is too low. Average body temperature for an opossum is 93 to 94 degrees. What's our body temperature? 98.6. Fun fact, squirrel's body temperature, because I know a lot of really useless information about squirrels, just like I do possums. Squirrel's body temperature is 104 degrees. So that is a huge difference between a possum and a squirrel, 10 degrees. What happens to us if our body temperature rises 5 degrees? We die. That's a huge difference. So the rabies virus, generally, and again, never say never, according to the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries, in the last 20 years, there have been 4 cases of possums with rabies. Now granted, possums are probably being tested for rabies a lot less than a lot of other animals, but in that same 20-year time frame, almost 5,600 cases of rabid raccoons have been reported. So if you're going to try to attract any animal to your yard, have it be a possum instead of a raccoon. The problem is, and people always ask me, how do I attract them? Well, the same things that attract possums, dog food, cat food, fresh veg, anything really, also attracts raccoons, foxes, and skunks, which are 3 rabies vector animals. Now, rabies vector animals, that actually means that those animals can be carriers of the rabies virus and be asymptomatic. They won't actually have it, but if they bite you, you can contract it. Possums are not rabies vectors, despite recent attempts that we won't talk about to get them on the list, which was absolutely ridiculous. So that's the difference there. And not only that, but remember how I mentioned that possums eat ticks? They don't get Lyme disease. They don't get ehrlichia. They don't get Rocky Mountain spotted fever. That's another thing with ticks. People are all, Lyme disease, Lyme disease, Lyme disease. It's only one species of tick, the deer tick, I believe, that carries Lyme disease. But there's a whole host of other ticks in Virginia that carry a lot of other nasty things as well. But yeah, I mean, they're just amazing critters. You know, they're immune to snake venom. They don't get rabies. A lot of people don't like possums because they have chickens. Chickens will go after possums. Chickens will go after possums? Yep. Got a lot. Really long drive. Did I mention? Possums will go after chickens. You know, those vicious possum killing chickens. Possums will go after chickens. So I have some friends who have chickens who are not real thrilled with my side business here. And there is also something called equine protozoal myeloencephalitis. I like to say that again because it makes me sound really smart. It just means that it is a disease that if a horse eats possum poop or something contaminated with possum poop, it's a disease that goes to their brain and will kill them. It is 100% fatal. The interesting thing about that is it's not something that the possum causes. Possums are intermediary hosts. So this critter that causes this disease specifically needs a possum to eat something that said critter is in, and then the disease forms in the possum and it is passed through possum poop. So it's not, you know, I've had horse people just eradicate every possum that ever stepped foot on their property because, you know, I mean, horses are big, beautiful, very expensive animals. I get it, you want to protect them. However, it's not that common. I actually have a rehabber friend who if I've had a lot of possums, I have given her the older ones to release on her property. She has 4 horses. They're pets. She's not worried about it. So it's not as common as horse people might make you think, but it is definitely, I mean, it will kill the horse. It is 100%, absolutely all the time, fatal. You know, there's ways to mitigate that, and if any horse people here, you know, want to talk about that. But other questions, ma'am?
Do they have a territory since they wander?
Not really. I mean, I don't think that they go super, super far. They don't really have a territory that they defend, like squirrels will have a territory, especially in mating season.
Sort of stay with them.
Yep. They are solitary animals in the wild, except when they get together a couple of times a year to get married and have kids. Other than that, they don't hang out together. Dad has no part in raising the kids. Well, obviously has a part in having the kids, but 2 parts actually. Possum humor there for you. But other than that, dads don't hang around. They're solitary. If they come across each other in the wild, they will kind of hiss and just turn and go. You know, they're extremely. You got a second wind. Docile animals. I would much rather go up against an adult possum in the wild if one needs to be captured, if it's injured or removed from a situation, than I would an adult squirrel. I raise baby squirrels. I do not mess with adult squirrels because I love my fingers. I like to keep them. Possums are a lot more predictable. They move in more predictable ways. Squirrels, squirrel rehabbers, back me up on this. You don't know what a squirrel's gonna do. They're like cats. They can put their feet over their head and twist their body and they're just freaky. No. If people call me and they say, hey, I found you an injured squirrel, okay, Hartwood Animal Hospital is at 15 Jewett Lane. Don't bring it to my house. I'm not dealing with an adult squirrel. So I am just about out of time. Got time for maybe one more question. I'm going to stick around because obviously, I mean, I'll be here for 4 days if you guys want to talk possums, but.
How fast are they moving?
Like in general or
Like if they're chasing a chicken.
I have heard, and again, he is not the one to ask. I have heard that they can go a couple of miles an hour. They're not, and they can get up and go. And he will. I was actually doing a presentation in Fredericksburg earlier this week at the City of Fredericksburg call center, the 911 call center. And I had him down on the floor, and because everybody wants to see him walk, because he's got this really funny, like, sexy runway. I don't know if he's a little loose in the goose because of his lack of hip sockets. And actually, Bonnie, you've got to see him walk, because I don't have. This is my first adult possum, but I've never seen another one walk the same way. But he's just got like this big. Let him down, let him walk, let him walk. So I did, and he was walking around, and all of a sudden somebody came in and slammed the door, and it startled him, and he went. I was like, and they just busted up. I was like, that was pretty funny. So they definitely can move. They just really choose. It's not. In fact, the hardest thing about having a possum in captivity is keeping it from getting obese. He's a big boy. One more quick little possum fact here. Their eyes, you see that he has these little black beady eyes. That's because he's a nocturnal animal. All you're seeing is pupil. So when they start to get heavy, which they are prone to do in captivity because they're lazy and they love to eat, then what happens is as they start to gain weight, fat pockets develop behind their eyes, and it will push the iris over. So if you see, you can Google, there's cross-eyed possums on YouTube, and that's not a good thing. They make it look like, oh, it's cross-eyed. That's because the fat is actually pushing the eyes. So I am always looking at his eyes, one, because they're beautiful, but just to make sure that he is still, I mean, he's got a little more than he probably should there, but it's winter, don't we all? But I always keep an eye, pun not intended, on his eyes to make sure that that isn't, and you know, with all of mine, the two non-release females that I have as well. I don't know what he's smelling. Yes, ma'am, last question.
Can we see him walk?
See him walk? You want to see him walk quick? Everybody want to see him walk real quick? All right. Here we go. Because he's been dying to get down. And you can see, if he walks away from you, you can really see his thumbs. Come on, Waddle Butt, show your stuff. He just wants to sit down.
Is he gonna find his way?
I was hoping I could really get him kind of going. Come on, Stu. Come on, Stu. Keep going, Stu. Keep going, Stu. There he goes. There he goes.
Oh.
All right, one more piece and that's it.